Donald Trump's lawsuit against the BBC has backfired spectacularly.
The BBC has made an extraordinary request for President Donald Trump's phone records, his private diaries even, and daily schedules from around the time of the January 6th Capitol riots. The broadcaster is seeking access to the president's communications as part of its defense against Trump's $10 billion lawsuit over the Panorama program, in which they spliced together two separate passages from his Jan 6th speech. But Trump's lawyers, they've hit back, accusing the Beeb of trying to put the president on trial over January the 6th through the back door.
The president, as he has done numerous times, tried to put another media outlet on trial for daring to call into question January 6th. Trump essentially thought he was putting the BBC on trial, but in turn, the BBC are now trying to put Trump's January 6th records on the table, talking phone logs, calendars, schedules, daily diaries, communications about the Stop the Steal rally, all because Trump decided to sue the British broadcaster for around $10 billion over a documentary edit of his January 6th speech. Trump's lawsuit centers on a BBC Panorama documentary about January 6th, and the documentary edited together parts of Trump's speech in a way that he wasn't happy with. The BBC actually acknowledged that the edit created a misleading impression, and so they apologized for it. Of course, for Trump, this wasn't enough, so like he did with ABC, the Wall Street Journal, etc., he is suing the company for $10 billion. But the BBC, they're fighting back. It has challenged the jurisdiction of the Florida court, arguing that the documentary was not broadcast in Florida or even in the United States.
The BBC just asked Trump to hand over his private phone records and schedule. This is in relation to his $10 billion lawsuit against them. He sued them for defamation, saying the way they edited his January 6th video was defamatory. Now, they instead are fighting it, unlike other media outlets who just paid him. So much so that they're asking for discovery and asking for this information, because the defense to defamation is truth. So what his actual plan was for January 6th just becomes relevant. Trump may also be regretting this lawsuit because the Supreme Court didn't decide to make it easier for somebody like Trump to sue the press, like Alan Dershowitz wanted. Alan Dershowitz wanted the Supreme Court to overturn New York Times versus Sullivan. He convinced Gorsuch and Thomas, but not enough of the other justices. George Trump is going to have to still prove actual malice or reckless disregard to the truth, which is very difficult, and it makes this BBC lawsuit a whole heck of a lot more interesting. For more on this, find the Mistrial audio podcast wherever you listen to podcasts.
The problem now for Trump is the case has entered the discovery phase, and that's where Trump's legal stunt gets dangerous for his administration, because if he claims that the BBC defamed him by misrepresenting his January 6th conduct, then the BBC have to argue that his January 6th conduct, intent, communications, and public meaning are relevant to the case. So as a result, Trump's lawsuit may force a fight over records he would rather keep hidden, right? The BBC is seeking Trump's telephone logs, calendars, schedules, and diaries from November 3rd, 2020 to January 20, 2021. This, of course, the period from Election Day through Inauguration Day. This will call into question the election lies that were peddled, the pressure campaign, the fake elector scheme, the Stop the Steal rally, and of course the attack on the Capitol and subsequent pardons later issued to rioters.
The incitement of a violent political insurrection against this Congress, against the Vice President of the United States, against the Constitution, and against the election of 2020. We did not need Sherlock Holmes in a magnifying glass to find the presidential crime with Donald Trump. It came right into this House and smashed us in the face. Now, it's true Chairman Comer has collected a mountain of evidence over the last 11 months, tens of thousands of pages of documents, dozens of hours of interviews with government officials, but all of it clearly shows that Joe Biden committed no crime. Even their own witnesses that they called to the only public hearing they had said there is not remotely enough evidence to justify impeachment. Chairman Comer.
This, of course, being the entire period that Trump and his allies tried to dilute with sanitized stories about peaceful protests or tourist visits. The BBC are now essentially saying, fine, you want to sue over how January 6th was characterized? Let's see your character and see the underlying records. BBC is also asking Trump to identify everyone he communicated with about any aspect of the January 6th rally. That includes planning the event and discussions after the event. These are exactly the kinds of questions that Trump wanted to keep politically controlled. Now, they may be litigated because he wanted to sue the BBC. That's why it could be so damaging, right? Defamation suits are not press conferences. They're not just a way for him to make an accusation and walk away. You have to actually produce evidence. You have to sit for questioning. You expose yourself to discovery. And Trump's entire political style depends on him making sweeping claims without having to survive that process. Hence, when he's pressed on these allegations that he is still to this day peddling.
You ever hear the fake news? They say that's an 80-20 issue. No, it's not. It's 99-1. You know, I've been doing politics now for 10 years. Not that long, considering I've won 3 elections, you know, so but we did great in the second one. It was a rigged deal.
He gets mad and storms off like a petulant child.
Crooked press. People like stupid Biden. He's not smart enough to know what's going on, but people that surrounded him, surrounded his beautiful, resolute desk in the Oval Office. What they did to the lives of people, they destroyed people. They sent people to jail who did nothing wrong.
All right, just to be very clear, there's no evidence of what you're saying. But let me ask you about Todd Blanche. Let me ask you about Todd Blanche.
Listen to me.
Let's talk about Todd Blanche.
There's tremendous evidence. There's nothing but evidence. The election was rigged. It was a dirty election.
Mr.
And it's happening again right now in California.
You've never presented evidence.
It's happening right now in California. Right now, it's look at what's happening in California.
Where's the evidence to that?
It's
the
4 days.
Republicans are doing well in
California. No, they're not. They're dropping fast because it's a rigged election. Let me tell you, it's 4 days, and they aren't even close to coming up with it.
That's how they count the votes.
You know why they're doing
that?
Because they're cheating on the election.
Do you have evidence to support
all
that?
All I have to do is look. All I have to do is look.
That's not evidence.
And I listen to people, and let's see what happens.
But, sir, that's not evidence.
Do you think it's appropriate?
That's how they count the votes in
California. Do you think it's appropriate that they have an election and 5 days later they're nowhere close to picking a winner?
State and local officials acknowledge they are slow. They're urging.
No, they're crooked.
They're urging the votes to be counted quickly. That's how they vote in California.
They're crooked, just like you're crooked. Your press is crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked.
To be fair, I'm not crooked, but let's
really.
Let's
well,
continue.
You play right into their hands.
Let's continue.
You're either crooked or you're stupid. You play right into their hands with this crap. You know that these elections are rigged. Your network knows that they're rigged. You know that I won an election in a landslide, and I got 94% bad press.
But, Mr. President,
you know why I got that? Because you have no credibility.
But you've never presented evidence that it was rigged. Let's keep talking about. I want to talk about Todd Blanche.
You have more evidence. There's more evidence than ever presented.
Let's talk about
your elections in this country. We're like a third world country.
But, sir,
your elections are crooked, and you're crooked, and Meet the Press is crooked, and so is ABC and CBS and CNN.
But, Mr. President,
you're one-sided crooked networks. All right, let's call it quits because I've had enough. Thank you, darling. Have a good time.
Mr. President, please. I traveled all the way to Wisconsin.
I've sat in the rain with you.
I know.
I've sat in the rain with you for an hour, on and off in the rain, and I've given you enough time. You ought to straighten out your press because you know what?
Mr.
A country can never be great with a dishonest press.
We traveled all the way to Wisconsin for this interview.
Trump's lawyers are already complaining that the BBC is trying to use the lawsuit to put him on trial for January 6th. They say the discovery requests go far beyond the issues in the case. But that complaint in itself is revealing because Trump chose the battleground here. He sued over how a documentary portrayed his January 6th speech. Once he did that, he invited the BBC to defend itself by examining the broader January 6th record. I mean, you can't throw January 6th into a court and then act shocked when the events surrounding January 6th show up. And it's not just January 6th records, right? The BBC has also gone after his financial records, as Trump claimed the documentary harmed the value of his brand, properties, and businesses. So the BBC wants the evidence. What was the alleged financial damage that he suffered? And the asymmetry is also striking, right? As countless outlets have reported, the BBC have produced more than 45,000 documents in the discovery phase. Trump, according to the Daily Beast, has not turned over any documents in the $10 billion case thus far. In other words, they're saying, let's dance, mate. As we know with this president, this case, it fits a broader pattern. He sues media organizations. He threatens enormous damages. He claims that he's been treated unfairly, and he uses the lawsuit as a political message. But discovery is the part that he cannot fully control. And here the BBC, they're turning his own legal aggression against him.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.